So here's a head scratcher. What is critical thinking? Why is it important to decision making? And why do our viewers need to know more about it and do it better?
All right. Well, thanks for having me on your little show here. So what is critical thinking, right? Critical thinking is taking yourself out of what your usual mode is, your automatic mode, right? We're in automatic most of the time. An example is you're driving your car to work, and a lot of times you just don't even remember the drive. Kind of scary, right? Doesn't mean if someone cut in front of you, you'd hit them, but you might miss something along the way, a sign, road closed, or a restaurant opening, or something of that sort. So it's taking yourself out of this automatic mode. It's purposeful. You do it. You have to say, I need to think differently about this situation. It's being aware of what's influencing your thinking. Like, for instance, your experience is one of the major factors. What experiences are influencing? What matters? What doesn't matter? And critical thinking is the process of understanding a problem, getting clear on what it is, coming to a conclusion about what to do, and then taking action. So why is it important is we err all the time. All right? You make thousands of conclusions a day. What pair of shoes to wear, what to eat for lunch. If you wear a different pair of shoes and your feet hurt at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. But in your job, if you're making an important decision and you're doing it on, just not really thinking about it, it could have a significant consequence. So critical thinking, the value of critical thinking is to avoid errors, is to get clear on what the issue is so you spend time working on the right stuff.
So when we're in this sort of autopilot, so when we're driving to work on automatic, one of the benefits maybe of being in autopilot is speed. And we know that our bosses, our employers, our customers are all asking for us to be making more decisions and faster. So how do we kind of slow it down, take a step back, and not really sacrifice so much of the decision-making speed, but be a little bit smarter about how we think?
It's a good question because people think that critical thinking and spending more time thinking about something actually slows things down. But in the big scheme, it actually speeds things up. The beginning is slower. You're not going and doing something, you're actually asking questions and thinking about it. But the end result is you're generally going to finish faster, and you'll have less redos, because if you don't error and you have to redo it, that all takes time. So the reality is critical thinking actually saves you time, but it doesn't feel that way, because at the beginning you're asking a lot of questions, you're not doing anything. And so it's a misnomer that it slows you down. But it takes a discipline because we're shifting the emphasis from quickly, yeah, I get it, and then doing, to, well, wait a minute, maybe we don't get it. Maybe we need to just really understand what we're doing, what the problem is, what the purpose of what we're doing is, and then we could focus on executing to that.
So what are some of the questions that we should be asking in those beginning stages?
One of the most important tools and the easier ones to use is what we call inspection, is looking at the words to really understand what they mean. So when someone says, we need to do this a little bit better, we need better quality. Well, what does better quality mean? What does better mean? Well, you need to do this faster. If your faster is 10% faster, but my faster is 50% faster, we'd have very different solutions. So you inspect the words. What does this mean? We've all been involved in parking in a parking lot, right? In a crowded grocery store parking lot. And we're looking around for a spot, and people going with carts, they're texting, not looking where they're going. And someone in the passenger seat says to you, there's a spot. Well, that doesn't help. So when you give someone instructions, it might help to be a little clearer. So inspecting words, making sure they really understand what they are. That's one of the most important tools. We ask questions like why. Now, you don't ask why because you don't want to do it or you don't think it's important. You ask why because you really want to get more information. Why are we actually doing this? What problem are we trying to solve? And does this task that you're giving me or I'm giving you actually go and solve that problem? So we ask questions like that. We ask questions like, what's the impact? Before you go crazy on fixing something, it's like, well, what's the impact if we don't do this? What's the impact if we do this? If your schedule is running behind, if you're running behind schedule, who does it affect? What are the consequences of that? So those are some of the questions we ask in critical thinking to get people to really understand what problem are we really trying to solve.
It sounds like something that's maybe a little difficult to coach others through until you really understand it. Is it something that you can really ask those questions to yourself, or are you asking the questions of someone else and someone else asks the questions?
Well, both.
of you?
Most of the things we do is with other people, so most of the time we're asking ourselves and other people at the same time. But one of the modules in our workshops is called Being a Thinking Coach, is how do you get other people to think critically? You need to understand critical thinking before you do that. So people could read my book.
Okay, that's great. And we'll put a link to your book in the comments. And before we sign off today, what are a couple quick tips and tools that our viewers can take away to start thinking smarter right away?
Okay. The very first question is, if I'm about to do something or I'm trying to solve this problem, does it really make a material difference as to what I do? Does it really matter? Because it doesn't matter what pair of shoes you really wear. I mean, sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't. So does it really matter? And if it really matters, then you have to step back and say, maybe I need to ask a couple questions before I leap, right? What are the assumptions I'm potentially making here? Why am I making those assumptions? So you're just triggering yourself saying, this really matters. So before I just quickly execute, maybe I need to ask just a couple of questions. It doesn't take a long time. You can do critical thinking seconds or minutes at a time. Now you can spend a whole day on it as well, but most of the time it's just a few minutes of just asking a couple of questions that could potentially save you an awful lot of time.
So really get yourself into the right mindset
You have
from
to,
the outset.
you have to do that. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Michael. And thank you everyone for watching, and stay tuned for future installments in our Human Intelligence series.
Thank you.